Good day, my good people. We are in test mode again. I know a couple people was like, "Hey, how long you gonna be testing?" Um, my folks tell me until we get it right. So I am going to not answer that right now. I'll have to make that call back in just a minute. But listen, let me uh, let me make sure I got all this stuff set up right. I'm doing something wrong. Let me focus. This is the Real Life Real Estate Investing Show where we talk about real life real estate situations, but we bring you real life real estate solutions. I'm your host, Glenn Glass, but affectionately known as Mr. Dollar Out of a Dime. And today we are still testing, but I want to talk about cold calling. I want to talk about cold calling and warm calling. So that's going to be our topic today. We're going to talk about cold calling. What are the top 5 things that I recommend when cold calling? All right, that's going to be the title of this show today. So let's get into it. I'll be right back after these messages. All right, good people, we're back. And again, we're just going to be talking about a couple different things today. Again, we're testing today, just so you know. This is not the full show. We will, I guess, have a full show. But we're going to be talking about cold calling and what are some of the things that people should be paying attention to when cold calling. And of course, if you got any questions, please feel free to go ahead and um, send me your questions. If you got any questions, if you got anything you want to talk about other than cold calling. But one of the things I always look at as it relates to cold calling, I'm sorry. Uh, y'all help me out. I got to get my focus back together. One of the things that I always talk about as it relates to cold calling is personality. One of the things that I have found is um, in my now experience with, okay, what am I doing? What's happening? I'm sorry. Again, y'all, we're still testing. So if y'all see me go off a little bit, please forgive me. And I am getting some notifications of things over here that I want to make sure I get in order because I am being told what we need to be doing during this time. Okay, so one of the things I was just told is that we need to make sure, I want to make sure you guys like, share, and subscribe. Like this video, share this video, and subscribe to our many different channels. The YouTube channel, if you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell. These are things that I'm being taught to say. Hit the notification bell. If you're watching on Instagram, which I am still trying to see where that's showing up. They're telling me that it is, so I am going to believe that it is. And if you're watching on Instagram, go ahead and uh, tell me that you're joining me, and I don't have it there. Hopefully, I'll have it here. Tell me that you're joining me. If you got any questions, go ahead and put your questions in the comments. If there's anything that you want to discuss other than my topic today, I'll go ahead and entertain that as well. Because again, we're just testing, and I am still checking to make sure everything is showing up the way it's supposed to show up. And my team is giving me instructions on what I need to be doing or what I need to be paying attention to. All right. So I did that part. I'm following instructions, y'all. Again, I want to make sure I tell y'all we're testing. And this is going there, and this is going there. All right. I'll be honest. I was told I was reminded at the last minute that were some of the things that we're supposed to be doing. But again, we're here. We're gonna get it together, and we're gonna continue to make this happen. All right. So again, we're testing, and some of the topics that we're going to talk about today is, or the topic we're going to talk about today is cold calling, and some of the things that people should be paying attention to when cold calling. Okay, so the other question that I was asked is it should I cold call or should I send text messages? And I often say it depends. It depends. And on many of the answers as it relates to real estate, I found that the answer is usually it depends. And in this situation, it depends on what your budget is, your marketing budget is, what your time availability is, um, and how thick your skin is, pretty much. Texting does get you out of the way of having a conversation with the seller, which I find is the easiest ways to build rapport, which is one of the most important things in having or doing a deal is building rapport. Um, because one thing I understand is that sellers receive tons and tons and tons. Yeah, so many people are now doing wholesaling, and so many people are told so many different things to do. A lot of times, people are now making phone calls. And you got to keep in mind that you're not the only, in many cases, you're not the only person that's called these people about their um, their property. You're not the only person that's making these phone calls. A lot of people have called these people. Good day, Mr. Jones. How you doing, sir? Thank you for joining me. A lot of people are reaching out to these people either via text or via phone call, and a lot of them are getting cold calls about their property. Right now, we don't know if they're motivated until we get on the phone with them. We don't many times if it's a cold call, we don't know anything about these people. Or for the most part, if you've done some research, which you should, if you've done some research on the property, the owners, the location, the area, the bedrooms, the baths, a lot of these things you should already have done research on before you get these people on the call. However, in some cases, many of us are using dialers and it dials randomly. So we don't always have a heads up on the property that we're specifically calling about. So in that case, get in the habit of learning how to, once that property address or the seller's name or whomever, however you're identifying the person, I'm sure that information shows up on your screen when they come on the call, right? Otherwise, how do you know that you're calling about XYZ property at such and such address? Do yourself a favor, highlight that address, do a quick Google search, pull it up on Zillow, Realtor, whatever the case may be, so that you have that information that you're confirming with them while you're on the phone, right? Because again, sellers are getting so many different calls from different people about their specific property. And one of the things that you want to do, one of the top things that I always recommend is find a way to stand out, right? How do you capture that seller's attention within the first 3 to 5 seconds to say, hey, I'm different from all the other people that have called, right? That's what a lot of times people miss. What makes you different from all the other people that called? Because keep in mind, there are a lot of people that are still calling from scripts. A lot of people are still following a script. Their teachers are teaching them to follow a script rather than use the script as a guideline. This script tells them to ask those age-old questions. Why are you selling? Of course, it's important to know why the seller is selling. However, there is a way to weave that in so it doesn't sound so obvious that you're following a boilerplate script. Because think about it, all the other people that have called have asked those very same questions. Why are you selling? Right? So a lot of times those sellers are getting bombarded with these calls. What they realize are from people who are following the same script. So what are you going to do to stand out? What's different about you? Right? A lot of times I think people are following the script so heavily that they're not paying attention to what the seller has to say. And I believe more importantly, the seller needs to understand that you're calling to resolve a potential issue that they have. Okay, so let me go back. Number one, Sellers are getting all these types of calls. Sellers are getting several calls. Sellers are getting, well, we're calling them sellers. Okay, they're not sellers until they actually sell. The potential seller, we'll call them potential sellers or property owners, are getting a lot of calls. They're getting a lot of text messages, a lot of communication. Maybe the direct mail. Some of those things are still coming. What makes you different from those other communications that they've had for these people that are interested in purchasing their property? What makes you different, right? How are you greeting them when they answer the phone? How are you introducing yourself? Are you introducing yourself as, the same way many other people do? We're buying properties in the area. That, and because now so many, it worked before. A lot of these things worked before because one or two or three or 10 people were probably making these phone calls and they hadn't gotten around to most of the people that they're reaching out to. Because think about it, most of us that are in this business are getting our lists from the same place in many cases, right? We're not filtering out all the different things, some which many of us should be looking for direct things that we should be paying attention to, right? How long the person has owned it, how much equity is in the house, potentially how old the person is, if they're retiring from investing. Like, these are things that oftentimes people don't always filter out. So you're getting a lot of the same people that other people are getting on their list. So change it up a bit when you get on the call with these people that are answering their calls, because most times people don't answer, they don't recognize the numbers and they're not answering. But when they do, keep in mind they're probably in the middle of several other things. They're probably at work, they're probably busy, they're probably with the family, they're probably doing several other things. What makes you stand out, right? um, my biggest thing that I do, and it depends on the tone of the person that picks up the phone, right? Typically, when people pick up the phone from a phone call from a number that they don't know, they're already a little apprehensive about that conversation. First of all, who's this calling me from this number that I don't recognize, right? And a lot of times we're calling, virtual. Those of us that do virtual wholesaling, we're calling from area codes that they don't recognize a lot of times, right? So keep in mind these things. Before that person picks up the phone, these are things you want to be mindful of when making that call. They're busy, they're tired, they just got off work, they're on their way home from work. They don't know you, they don't recognize the number, they don't recognize the area code. So this is a complete cold call. What do you do to break the ice when that person answers the phone? What I typically say, hey, how you doing? This is Glenn. My name is Glenn. I'm telling you who I am, because that's the first thing typically they want to know. Who are you and why are you calling me? My name is Glenn. I'm trying to reach John about a property that I believe he owns at XYZ address. Is now a good time to have a conversation about that? Right now, first of all, now you told John who you are. You told John why you're calling. You told John what you're calling about as it relates to the property. Now, John doesn't know if you're calling about buying his property, right? You know, Sometimes John will think that that's why you're calling, and that's the first response he'll give you. In other cases, John may think, okay, is something wrong with my property, right? John is now concerned. Now you've gotten John's attention. Keep that in mind. You've got John's attention. Now, the next thing you want to say to John, if John is open to having a conversation, is now a good time to have a conversation about the property. All right. I know you're probably busy. I don't want to keep you long. I just had a few questions. Right. What do you want to know? Who are you? Why are you calling? Like, these are things that John is trying to figure out about who you are. So you have to be mindful of John's time and be mindful that this is a complete cold call, right? So break the ice. Even if you're humorous, not everybody's humorous. I have probably some a few dad jokes that I tell to break the ice. But I want to get on the same level as the person that I'm having a conversation with as it relates to tone, right? These are things that oftentimes people miss. If they answer the phone, who is this? That tone often says they're not in the mood to have a conversation, or they're not in the mood to have a conversation with you, a person whom they have no idea who they are. Right. Um, Number two, sellers are more receptive to people who listen rather than do the most talking. Right. My goal is to ask open-ended questions to lead the seller to tell me as much as they want to share with me about their property or about their life, because typically sometimes in their life I can get an idea of what their potential situation may be as it relates to why they may be motivated to sell, as opposed to asking that age old question, why are you selling? Ask the question, how are you today? Is everything okay? I mean, that's probably prying a little bit for a person that you have no idea who you're talking to. But these are open-ended questions that oftentimes allows that person to tell you a little bit about their story that gives you more of an opening to why you can potentially ask them about selling their property or find out their level of motivation so that you can make an offer that makes sense for you and makes sense for them, right? But be mindful of not talking so much and doing more listening, right? Um, Sellers are more receptive to the person that's seemingly more genuine about resolving or solving a problem as opposed to making money. Now, of course, we're in this business to make money, flat out. It is what it is. We're in this business to make money. However, if that's the first thing that the seller, or the potential seller, I should say, is is feeding off of in there, listening to your conversation, you're asking about, so many different things. How much does it cost to do this? Have you done any renovations? Yeah, of course we need to know all those questions, right? And if you're asking those questions straight out like that, oftentimes the seller will pick up on you're trying to make a quick dollar off of their property, right? Which is typically the case, right? Uh, okay, I just got another message. Again, I want to make sure I remind y'all that we are testing. For those of you that are just joining us or that you watch this replay, I'm testing a few different platforms, so I'm getting messages from my team about different things I need to be paying attention to. But we're okay. All right. Are we live on? I hope you're there with me. I don't see that we're live on IG. I think that's what's missing. So help me out, gentlemen. Make sure we're live on IG. All right. So um, back to what I was saying. The seller is listening to you more often, but what you want to get them to do is talk more and ask open-ended questions about the property, things that they can tell you, or even ask questions about them, things that they can share with you about themselves and the property to determine their level of motivation. And don't just be asking specific questions to see how much money you're going to make, right? And again, as I mentioned earlier, if you don't have the information about the property that you're calling on before making the call, just Google the address while you're on the phone with them, right? Google the address and get some clarification on what types of things are going on with that property. Um, Again, do not, I repeat, do the very best you can. Let me say this, do the very best you can, even as a beginner, to not read from a script. This business is about dealing with people, right? And if they know that you're just reading from a script, you don't sound like you know what you're doing, right? And let me just tell you why, right? Because I have properties for sale. And I get tons and tons of phone calls from newbie wholesalers, and they're doing their very best to convince me that they are the actual buyer, right? They're doing their very best to convince me, and I can hear it in their voice, the types of questions that they're asking and the things that they're saying tells me that they have no clue of what they're doing, right? They've gotten into a training, which is okay. They're reading from a script. They're asking the age old questions, and they're just going based on the things that they're reading from this script for the questions they should ask, as opposed to being conversational, as opposed to saying, tell them a little bit about themselves. Yes, I'm even that I'm new to investing. I can appreciate that even as an experienced investor or as a seller. If you tell me this is something that you're new to, but based on what you know or based on what you've learned, new can be you've been doing it for 2 years in somebody's scenario, and 2 years of experience can give you quite a bit of knowledge, right? Yeah, maybe not as much as you want to have, depending on what you're doing, but it can give you quite a bit of knowledge and quite a bit of understanding. So new is relative. I'm still new to this. Don't feel any kind of way, about not being in it for 20 years or 10 years or 15 years. If you're new, share with the potential seller that I'm still new to this, so I'm just calling to confirm some information. I want to be sure that I have the right information to make you the right offer, right? Okay. Now, even in being new to this, the seller may feel some kind of way. If you hear it in their voice, they feel some kind of way about you being new. Okay. Which I believe they're more receptive to people that are new. But I do have an experienced partner. My experienced partner is the one that helps me get to where I need to be, however you want to, say that part. But it's okay to say that you're new, right? As opposed to coming off as a person who's acting like they know what they're talking about, but you really don't know. All right. I've had calls from individuals about properties that I have for sale, and they ask me questions like, or um, they tell me things. I'm trying to think of one of the recent conversations I had. I had one just recently. Um, the gentleman called and didn't try to didn't try to how do I say this? It didn't even seem like he wanted to even pretend that he knew what he was talking about. Just the way he was talking, right? I'm calling about the house at such and such and such. Okay. Um, how many bedrooms and baths does it have? Like for me, I guess as an experienced person, I know if I'm calling someone about a property that they own, I want to have some idea of what I'm talking about. So that's where I Google that address. So if you're asking about beds and baths, I know, first of all, you've not done any research, right? You're not prepared. That tells me you're not prepared to make an offer, right? Because if you're within the 30 seconds, 30 to 45 seconds of this conversation, and you don't have enough information to make an offer, that tells me that you're not, in the way I see it, right? And this is the way I teach. This is the way I see it. If you're calling me asking me how many bedrooms or baths, right? If you're asking me if how old is the roof, and the listing that I have out is it's clearly a condo, that tells me that you haven't done enough research, right? And these are warm calls. Let me change this. I'm switching up a little bit. I have a listing out on Zillow for a property. So it's not technically a cold call. It's a warm call because I have a listing out there. So I'm looking for you to call me. So it doesn't make it a complete cold call. It's a warm call. So in that case, if I have a listing out there already and I've given you my number to call me, at the very least, have enough of an idea that you've gotten this. Make sure you make it known to me that you've researched the property, you've run the numbers. If you know how to do that, if you haven't done that, or you don't know how to do that, then you probably need some additional training. But if you haven't done that already and you have this information available, the question that you should be asking me is how much repairs need to be done, right? Ask me to explain the extent of the repairs, because if you've seen the pictures, and I'm not saying that everybody has updated pictures. Some of the pictures even on my listing I think are outdated. but for the most part, the newer ones, you can see the difference between, the previous and the current. And because I described the situation in the listing. Tell me, when you're having a conversation, let me know that you've checked it out. Don't ask me how many bedrooms and baths, because it's already there. Don't ask me if it's a new roof, if it's a condo, right? I don't know the last time the roof was replaced, or I don't know if I should know that. And just these types of things. Again, you're asking me how long have I owned it, which is a very good question. Okay, I get it, but think about why you're asking that question. And in that scenario, have you done the research to find out how long I've owned it? Because it's public record, right? Am I the actual owner? It might be the question that you want to ask. But if I've listed it and you're calling me, then it's highly likely that I'm the one. So again, these are things that, as a cold caller or a warm caller, be prepared, right? And the one thing the last thing I'll mention is, last but certainly not least, is speak with confidence. When you're doing calls, speak with confidence. Act as if, right, you know what you're talking about, right? Even if you have to rehearse the calls, and whomever your coach or trainer, whomever that is, should be doing these things with you. Or if you're doing it on your own, practice with someone else, right? Call up a person, that or call up an investor and ask them if they'll do a role play with you, right? And rehearse the call in your head, rehearse the call with someone else, or rehearse the call with your coach or your mentor if you have one. Rehearse. Practice the call before you pick up the phone, because that could mean the difference between getting a deal done and losing deals altogether, right? And I know picking up that phone and making that call is probably one of the hardest things that many people do. I've been doing it for quite some time, and it's still, I'm reluctant at times, but I still do it to keep my skill sharpened. And keep in mind, this is the other thing. This is another reason why I still do calls, is because times change. Keep in mind that times changed. Times change, and people's ideas and ideologies have changed, right? Think about, during the time some of us have gotten that training about why are you selling, and just the typical things that we've been told to ask. The times have changed, right? So the time being that the times have changed, we have to change our ideology. We have to change our ideology because most people that own properties have changed theirs, right? Now, again, I want to emphasize that nothing is really new. There's really no new things. It's just these things are cyclical. And most times the things have changed over and over again, but they've changed back to the same thing, right? So I'm not saying that there's a new glamorous way to do what we do. It's just that the times change, and the way that we approach the things that we're doing as it relates to the business of real estate, we have to change with those times. And it's highly likely that in that change is just something that's happened previously, right? There are no new fundamentals. There are no new fundamentals in the business of real estate investing. There are no new fundamentals. The fundamentals hardly ever change. The systems and the tools and the things that we do to get deals and do certain things have changed, but the fundamentals are the same. You still got to have some type of personality when you're having conversations with people that have properties. What's the situation, right? Is there someone living in the house, right? If it's a cold call, if you're calling on listings, it's highly likely that that's not a cold call, and that listing probably has enough information in there to determine what scenario or situation that property may currently be in. If it doesn't, be sure you ask an open-ended question to have them confirm the information that you're looking for. All right. Again, thank you all for watching. Thank you for being here with me. I want to remind you, this is a test that we're testing the show, and that's why we don't have a guest yet. We haven't brought a guest on because we're still testing. But I still want to be sure that I use this time not just to say testing, testing, one, two, three, but I want to give some valuable information to those of you that are watching or will watch the replay. So do me a favor, if you're hanging out with me or you're watching today, go ahead and put just put in the chat where you're watching from, and don't forget to share this. Don't forget to share this. Don't forget to share this with your friends. Subscribe to the channel. Go ahead and put a comment below. Just tell me where you're watching from. And if any of this is resonating with you, if this is something that you think is valuable, all right, tell me if this is something that can help you out when doing your cold calling. All right. And yeah, just put a one in the chat if this makes sense to you. All right. Ms. Rucker, thank you for joining me. Thank you for joining me. Hopefully you got our message. I believe my team sent a message about getting with you this afternoon. So again, this show is a test, but we're actually talking about cold calling and some of the things, the skills that are necessary when cold calling. And I'll kind of go back through the list. Make sure you stand out. Make sure you stand out above any of the other callers that people have called that are getting calls from. Make sure you do more listening than talking, right? Make sure you're genuinely concerned about the seller's situation as opposed to your payday, right? That's a major thing. Um, Make sure you don't read from a script. If you have a script, follow the script. I'm not saying don't follow the script, but following the script and reading from it is two different things, in my opinion. I say if there's a place in there that asks how many bedrooms and baths, that could easily be changed. Tell me a little bit more about the property, right? Some people may believe that. Um, thank you, Shanika. Thank you for joining me. And this is about, hopefully this is helpful to you. Um, Tell me a little bit more about the property as opposed to how many bedrooms and baths, right? Now, in that situation, they're probably going to tell you about, um, several different things. They might tell you it needs carpet, it needs paint, it needs this, it needs that, or it doesn't need anything. It's the most perfect house they've ever had, they've ever seen. They might be telling you something, right? You just have to be more open and listening. Do what my teacher used to call active listening. Do more active listening and listening to their tone, listening to the things that they're saying, listen to um, how they're describing the property. Some of their descriptions may get very descriptive, and you can tell that that's a person who has some sentimental attachment to their property, right? Because you never know what the scenario may be if they're having a conversation with you. It could be a property that was left to them by a loved one. And in the description and in their telling you more about the property, many of those things will stand out, right? This property has been in our family for 50 years. That tells you that that's a property that they inherited, right? In some way or another that they inherited, if they say that they're the person that's owned it. Um, I grew up in this house. This is the house I grew up in. My family and I grew up in. You know, those things, those are telltale signs that property has been around with them for a while. So they may have some sentimental attachment to it, right? And that could tell you whether or not they're willing to be as flexible as you need them to be. It just depends. But at the end of the day, here's one thing I didn't mention is always make an offer. Always make an offer, right? Now I know some of you may be training with a coach that says to you, just, you know, set the appointment, get the seller prepared for another call, and they tell you not to make an offer, which is okay. It's okay that you're told not to make an offer because you're probably not learned enough to make a specific offer, right? But you should get to the point of learning how to do that as quickly as possible, because the moment you start giving up that call to someone else, it sets that person, the initial cold call, then becomes another cold call almost. It's a warm transfer in a sense, but it becomes almost another cold call when that person has to call and remind them that you spoke to, my partner or my junior partner, whomever that you're calling to remind them of. And they probably have talked to a ton of people, and they don't remember that you're supposed to be the person that calls them back, unless you call them back immediately and remind them of who they're supposed to be speaking to, right? So do the very, very best you can to get up to speed on making an offer, but always, always, always make an offer. Now, what I find, and again, I'm speaking from experience from someone who actually receives cold calls as well. I receive cold calls from many different people, and they make offers, and based on the offers that they make, I can tell that they have no real experience with running the numbers. Because when I ask, and I give them the benefit of the doubt, or at least I attempt to, where did you come up with that number, right? If I'm asking $150,000 for a property that I have online for sale, this is a warm situation. I'm asking you to call me. If I'm asking $150,000, why is your offer 50,000? I'm just curious. If I'm asking 150, your offer is 50. What helped you get to the point of making $100,000 less offer? Now I know, again, you're a real estate investor. I know you're trying to make money, right? But what gets you to $100,000 less than what I'm asking for? Okay. Even in the situation where you've seen, if you're also, let's say for example, it's a cold call, and you've done a little bit of research, or you maybe not have, maybe haven't. Let's say you get an idea of the property that you're calling about. You should be running, these are the things you should be on the call. You should be doing some research on the property while you're calling. You should have comps. You should be running comps. You should be able to do this simultaneously while you're on the call with that person, right? And in some cases, before they even get on the phone, because you're able to see the address, you should be able to run comps on that property, right? And get an idea, a ballpark figure of what that property last sold for, or what properties around it have last sold for. So that gives you a general idea. And based on the conversation, if they tell you what types of repairs need to be done in the house, or it's safe to make a safe assumption, depending on how old the property is, you can tell it needs most of the systems. And that's about $25,000 in repairs already, depending on the area of the country. Um, then you can make a good ballpark figure of an offer, right? Now, of course, you want to make an offer that makes sense for them, that makes sense for you to make money, and makes sense for the person that you ultimately wholesale it to make money. Now, I've seen here lately, and I'm not knocking people on getting paid for what they do if you're doing it well. I've seen here lately where people are trying to hit people over the head for a $200,000 or $100,000 wholesale fee. Okay, if there's room in there for it to make sense, get your money. I'm not tripping. Um, but you can't get $100,000 wholesale fee on a $200,000 property, right? Especially if it needs $50,000 or $60,000 in repairs. That doesn't leave much room for anybody to make money at all except you, right? Because keep in mind, you are dealing in a volume situation. If you're doing this business the way it should be done, you're doing the business in the volume, from a volume perspective. And that volume should have you in a position to have people that want to refer you, where you're doing enough business with the seller, potential seller, or potential buyer, where they could say, okay, well, this month we're not buying anything, but I know some other people that are buying because you bring us good deals. You know, make it make sense. Again, I want to go back for station identification. I'll give you notifications here. Um, we are testing today. Let's see, are we okay? Okay, are we live on IG yet? I still haven't seen that. This is the situation that we usually run into. Um, so thank you all for hanging out with me. Do me a favor again, for those of you that are watching, go ahead and put in the chat where you're watching from, what area of the country you're watching from. And if you have any questions, I'm open to answer any questions you may have about the things that we're discussing today. And just for those of you who have never watched the show before, this is a show that we do every Wednesday at noon Eastern. And usually I have a guest that comes on with me, which we hope to have happen in the next couple of weeks. We have guests that are prepared to come on the show, but we've just been doing some testing to be sure we get everything in order, um, to have them prepared when they come on the show. So we have everything in order. And this show, just for those of you that are joining us, we have been doing this show for 5 years, and we took a little bit of a break earlier this year, maybe about 6 months. We took a little bit of a break, and now we're getting things back teed up to get the show back going. And we're just trying to make sure things are better or back to where they were, or at least that, because my team is giving me some instructions on different things to do. I'll be honest, I'm not a professional podcaster, but I have learned quite a bit about it, and I'm doing some better things. So not only can you catch the show here, you can catch it on all the podcast platforms. Um, Follow us across all platforms. Um, so that's another part of what we're doing, is making sure we're syndicated on all the platforms. Hey, Shali, thank you for joining me. And okay, that's not good. All right, we're still challenged with getting streaming on the IG, so we need to work on that some more. But I do want to make sure I answer any questions that you all may have. Again, our topic today is wholesaling, or cold calling for wholesaling. And I am having some experience with this, doing it myself, and receiving calls. I wanted to kind of talk about some of the things I'm seeing and some of the things that are not happening the way they should happen when people are doing cold calls. So if you got any questions about anything that I discussed so far, if you're just joining me, if you're just joining, go ahead and put in the chat where you're watching from, and drop a 1 in the chat if this information is valuable to you. And do me a favor, please like this video wherever you're watching it from. Go ahead and give it a thumbs up, and share it, and go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Marwan, thank you for joining us from South Carolina. And tell me what topics, I guess that's the other question, since we're doing this testing, what topics would you all like to hear more of? I know one of our guests is going to be talking about the recession. And so I don't really want to get ahead of that conversation too much, but I still would like to hear your thoughts on what is happening, or what you think is happening in the recession, or how that's going to affect real estate investing. And what does a recession look like for you? Is it everybody is stuck in the house? Does it look like the pandemic again? Like what does a recession look like? And that's a conversation, again, like I said, we're going to be having. We have a guest that's going to come on and share their thoughts on what to do in a recession. And for those of you that are just joining, again, go ahead and put in the chat where you're watching from. I see we got a few people that are coming in. Go ahead and put in the chat where you're watching from, and let me know if you have any questions. And if this information is valuable to you, go ahead and put a 1 in the chat. But the thing I want to share with y'all is that I will be hosting. I think they put the link in there. I will be hosting an event on tomorrow evening. I think it should be in the description. I can't see it. But I'm hosting an event on tomorrow evening, a virtual workshop tomorrow evening. We're talking about credit, cash, and closing. Credit, cash, and closing. What is that about? Right? Many people have heard that you can get into the business of real estate investing with no money, no credit, no anything, which is to some degree not 100% false. It's not 100% true, but it's not 100% false. I say that to say I started this business back in 1998. Technically, 96 is when I started studying. And I did my first deal. No money, no credit, no job, no place to stay. So I had a quadruple deficit, if you will, when I got started. However, I studied for 2 years before I actually did that first deal. I studied for 2 years before I did that first deal. And I didn't do everything right. I was fortunate to connect with an attorney who became part of my power team at the time. An attorney helped me close my first deal. And he told me all the things I should do and all the things I shouldn't do. And I was fortunate to get that first deal done. So, with the help of someone, I was actually able to close my first deal. Now, did I go on and to get? I didn't go on to get a mentor. I continued to study and study and study, and then I did. I moved to Georgia, and I did my next first deal. I guess I could say that my second deal technically, but it was my first deal in Georgia, and I did that one probably on my own for the most part. Had some different people sharing with me different things to do, but I had to actually do them myself to make it work. So what does all that mean? Yes, you can do it with no money and no credit, but you have to have the resources. You have to put in the time to learn, and you have to execute. You have to put some action behind the things that you learn, and that's where a lot of people fall apart. So got my first deal done in Georgia and went on to do several deals after that. And many of them did not require my own cash or my own credit. However, what I want to make sure I emphasize is that I had to put in work. I had to put in time to learn. I had to ask questions. I had to connect with people. I had to pay some people to teach me some things, right? In my reluctance to do that, I lost a lot of money. I lost a lot of opportunities in my reluctance to invest in my education, right? So, but I was still able to do a lot of it on my own with no cash and credit. So it's not 100%, it's not entirely false that you can do it with no cash and credit. But if you don't have to, if you have to, I get it. But just realize that you're going to have to be in it for the long haul. It's not going to be something that you can do overnight. All right. You got to be in it for the long haul. And if you're in a position to invest in your education, buy books, go to seminars, whatever the case may be, hire a coach, invest in those things so that your learning curve will be shortened and you'll have a step-by-step formula to use. I didn't have a step-by-step formula. My step-by-step formula was getting up and taking a step or two or 10 or 1,000 every day. That was my step-by-step formula. And in that, I made a ton of mistakes. Um, but to shorten your learning curve and to minimize the costliness of mistakes, get with a coach or somebody that can help you through the process. And you'll see once you learn how to do it with no credit and cash, it becomes a little easier. But if you don't know how to do it with no credit and cash, then no is the answer. You can't do it with no credit and cash if you don't know what you're doing. But again, I'm just telling you about the workshop that I'll be hosting tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. And I'll make sure the link is posted below in the description. I don't see my team posted it here yet. So we'll get that posted in the description, or shoot me a DM, or leave a question in the chat, and I'll make sure you get that information. I'm going to be talking about credit, how to get better credit, so that you can get cash so that you can have more closings, right? So it's called the Credit Cash and Closings Workshop. Um, if you don't have to do it without credit, why would you? If you got decent credit, learn how to leverage your credit to be able to get the cash. Learn how to get the cash if you are doing if you're getting into the advanced area of real estate investing where you're buying and fixing and selling, or you're buying and holding, you're doing the BRRRR method as they call it. If you're doing those types of things, leverage your credit to get the cash so that you can have more closings. And we're going to be talking about more of that tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. Eastern. And again, if you have any questions about that, go ahead and put a comment in the chat or shoot me a DM and I'll make sure you get the information. Um, but I've just been told, let me see, did we get that going yet? If we haven't gotten it, okay, now we're there. Leverage your credit to get the cash so that you can have more closings. Okay. And we're going to be talking about more of that. All right, I'm sorry. For those of you that are now joining me on IG, thank y'all for joining me on IG. We have been live over on Facebook and the rest of the platforms for a while, but we just got live. We just became live on IG. So that you all know, we are testing. Today we're testing, and we're making sure everything is working. And it looks like it's working on IG now, at least on one of the channels. I don't know if we can do both of them. But thank y'all for joining me. If you're watching this now, go ahead and put a 1 in the chat. But if you catch the replay, put a 2. If you catch the replay, go ahead and put a 2. And do me a favor, for those of you that are still joining me, go ahead and put in the chat, if you're just now getting on, where you're watching from, what area of the country you're watching from. And if you have any questions, go ahead and put those questions in the chat as well. I'd like to address those questions also. And I think we are buffering on IG, is what I'm being told. So again, this is just a test day. Okay, this is just a test day. So we're working on getting everything in order. But I definitely wanted to make sure I gave you some value instead of just coming on and sitting around saying testing. So do me a favor, go ahead and let me know where you're watching from. Let me know if this information is valuable to you. If you're catching it now, go ahead and drop a 1 in the chat. And if you catch this on the replay, go ahead and drop a 2 in the chat. And don't forget, if you guys are watching this, go ahead and check out my ebook. It's been out for some time. I haven't really promoted it, but it's very valuable. It's 10 steps to getting your. Okay, I got the comment there. Okay, I see you there. It's still buffering. It seems like it's still buffering. Hopefully, I'm not doing something wrong. Go ahead and check out the ebook. It's only $27. And it has some very valuable information in it. And again, I am making sure we're live in a few different areas. So forgive me if I'm looking all over the place. Just make sure everything is going the way it's supposed to be. So thank you all for joining me today. I believe because of where we are right now, we should be able to get our guest on for next week, because it looks like we got most everything set up where it needs to be. We're technically supposed to be in a different location, so we're probably going to test the location. Thank you all for joining me today. If you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. I'll hang out for a few more minutes and answer any questions. This show is every Wednesday from noon until 1 p.m., 12 noon to 1 p.m. And like I said, generally we come on, we have a guest, and we talk about specific topics. We answer questions. So it's an interactive show. So if you have any questions, please, let us help you out. And it's about basically sharing information, getting back to doing this show as we've done it for quite some time. And our topic today was cold calling, and some of the skills of cold calling really are one to point out. Some of the things that get missed when cold calling. I'd be curious to know what are some of your ways of communicating with potential sellers. Are you doing more cold calling? Are you doing more text messaging? Are you doing direct mail? Are you relying on bandit signs? Like, what are some of the ways that you all are interacting with sellers? Um, if you're watching this on the replay, or if you're watching now, go ahead and leave me a comment in the chat. Let me know what you have going on. But that's all I have for today. Again, like I said, I'll hang out and answer a few more questions if you have any. Other than that, get your skills together, get your skills up, learn to do this business, learn the craft, and continue to study, because like I said again, there are no new fundamentals. The things that we experience at different times in the market are just things that we've experienced before, right? You'll have so many people that weren't around during I said this earlier. So many people that weren't around during the crash of 2008 are now today's gurus, and they're basing their knowledge on what they think happened because they didn't particularly specifically experience it. Not to say that their current knowledge isn't valuable. It's just there are certain things that happened during those times, the things that have happened since those times that have happened over and over and over again. The old saying, if you don't know your history, you're bound to either repeat it or you're bound to fail if you don't know your history. So I suggest learn the history of the business, but use the current things that are working in the current situation to make things happen. Because again, there are no new fundamentals. Things happen differently and they happen over and over again. You just got to know at the time what time to use the right things. So thank you again for joining me. Thank y'all for watching. This has been the Real Life Real Estate Investing Show, where we talk about real life real estate situations, where we bring you real life real estate solutions. Stay tuned for next week. Don't forget to get the ebook. It's only $27. Don't forget to like this video, give it a thumbs up, share it, subscribe to the channel. If you're not in the Facebook group, join the Real Life Real Estate Investing Facebook group. And look forward to seeing you real soon.